Welcome everyone to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. It's a beautiful day in southern Wisconsin, and I think it's a beautiful day in Texas where my guest is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to remind you of a few things. My Whole Planet Spirituality retreat at Unity Village in October 19th through 22nd. Love to have you there. It's going to be absolutely amazing, and we're going to be taking a deep dive on how to align our values and our thoughts and our feelings so that we live congruent, peaceful lives. And that's the key to becoming peacemakers on this planet. It's called Peace Begins With Me, and you can find out more at thespiritualforum.org/retreat. Also, just want to say, if you're a YouTube listener, please subscribe. It does help. I've got to get myself bumped up so that I can get to a point where I get some monetization going on, and would really appreciate rating, reviews, and any feedback that you have on the podcast. So let me introduce my guest today. Michael Koyoti has had a lifelong journey encompassing music, electronics, engineering, digital audio, technology executive roles, semiconductor startups, and venture capital. Alongside his technical career, he immersed himself into decades of meditation and spiritual inquiry with Sufis, Shamans, and mystic Christians. Among his many jobs, Michael worked for a government contractor that played a pivotal role in the development of the internet. And by early 2000, the internet was well underway in its transformation from a decentralized information network to a centralized and curated information system. Witnessing this correlation with centrally controlled religions and spiritual traditions, Michael began to focus on sovereign digital identity, decentralized computing, and cybersecurity, while taking a deep dive into ancient traditions that embrace the sovereignty of the human spirit. Today, we're going to be talking about the principles put forth in his book, Is-ness, Science, Consciousness, and Spirit. And this book explores the links between the science of Nikola Tesla, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, relativistic and quantum physics, and ancient spirit science traditions, and also delves into the web of entanglement that keeps us from realizing our divine nature. That is a lot of stuff, and trust me, Michael's bio is like this big, and I try to condense it down a little bit so that we can kind of get to the essence of what he's about. And I'm just really excited because I think these topics are so important today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. I'm really excited to talk about decentralization. I think this idea of embracing sovereignty in the human spirit, and especially the spiritual and how it intertwines in the world where we're talking about digital identity and these things that are kind of coming upon us right now, that I think if we're not really careful, we're just going to get kind of sucked into a system that we're not going to be happy with. So anyway, very happy to talk to you about all the stuff that's in your book. We're going to do this in two parts. So I want our listeners to know we're going to do this in two parts, because even though Michael's book is
104 pages.
You can hear me though. There we go.
Now I can hear you.
All right, there we go. Even though Michael's book is not a huge 800-page book, it's actually pretty concise. There's just so much in it, and so we're going to be doing this in two parts. And the first part, we're going to be focusing on Isness and the Aether and how our thoughts really impact the collective consciousness, and we're also going to be talking about the ruling hierarchies and how they keep us from our divine nature. And we're going to be doing a deeper dive into that last part in the second part. So that's kind of a summary of what our plans are today. So Michael, let's talk about Isness as a start. Actually, as a start, tell me your story. I always forgot. Almost forgot
my
that.
word.
Your story. I mean, not your whole biography, but like your spiritual
we'll keep it.
Yeah.
We'll keep it really short.
Yeah.
Short. Yeah. Well, in parallel with me pursuing a career in engineering, in audio and networking, I started meditating at the age of 13, and that was a journey that continues to this day. I avoided joining any organizations till my late teens, delved into a Sufi yoga kind of combined organization for 10 years, watched it completely devolve into a guru controlled cult, was unceremoniously defrocked and ran, not walked away. And from there pursued a very long journey studying traditions across continents, studying the history of spiritual and scientific inquiry, spanning from, ancient Greek philosophies to deep dive into mystic Christianity, some more time with Sufis, shamans, and there I found really a common thread, which I term Is-ness. I did not invent the word. And in this book, I take a stab at concisely describing the common threads that cross all these traditions.
So you were kind of a spiritually precocious young man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because not many people at 13 are meditating.
I was rebellious and precocious at the same time. Yes.
Rebelling against your teenage peers by meditating.
I sat alone at the
show
lunch
them.
table.
I can see that. I mean, I can see that. If you're having these different experiences, like who do you belong with? I think you probably learned there's your singularity right there is you.
Yeah.
So I think that the devolution of the religious thing that you were involved in into some sort of a cult is a common thing that we see in religions, and a common thing we see in groups where there's followers of some certain leader and everybody is really giving up so much of their power to this leader, only to have the leader exploit them in some way. And I think that's why so many people turn away from religion. Yeah.
And worse yet, the leader dies and his minions take over and take it to the next level of control.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. It's like we haven't really evolved from the era of kings and queens. We've just moved to a different expression.
And that's a deep subject, which I guess we'll take up in the next section, because we'll go down a rat hole if I pick up that.
Yeah, don't pick that one up. We're going to do that. We're going to go into deeper dive in the second session, because first we're going to talk about isness, and let's talk about that. Like what is that? Yeah.
I boil it down to three, really distill it down to three main points, which I found everywhere. I found in Sufi heart meditation. I found it in the mystic Christian traditions, which I would like to believe predates the Gospels. It's what Christians were before they were called Christians. And that's a deep subject, which we can chat a little bit about, because I think there's a more amazing story there than what we read in the canon scripture. But I found it in Buddhism, of course. But it boils down to three main principles. One is the essence of our consciousness exists only in the moment. It's a dimensionless, timeless presence. People who don't meditate look at me like I have 10 heads and 7 arms, but if you meditated at all and felt that silent center, that nothingness, that is our essence. That is our presence in this reality. That is the point with which we perceive reality, from a point that only exists in the moment. The next principle is this idea of an infinite journey, that we are, since we all exist in a unique point in time and space, we perceive the universe uniquely. We are each on a unique, and I would say sacred journey. It has no beginning, has no end. And the importance of that is for those who look to gurus and masters who tell you, you know, if you do this for 20 years, you'll attain this. My point to them is, well, isn't the journey infinite? And they say yes. And well, then you're no further along than I am.
I love that.
So the infinite journey is very important because it means you don't arrive at some nirvana, the ultimate destination. Those are signposts, those are experiences. Take them and move on. But when we think that we're sacrificing our life and our journey to achieve something, yes, by all means, achieve knowledge, achieve skills, and so on. But to think that there's some ultimate achievement there rather than an infinite journey, you know, that you hear it in a lot of traditions: embrace the journey, not the goal. So that was exceedingly important for me to learn after leaving a very goal-oriented meditation practice. The last point, which is pretty prevalent, is universal consciousness, which is we, in our unique single dimensionless presence in this reality, are part of a universal consciousness. This translates to do unto others as you would do to yourself. I would take it a step further. What you do to others, you're also doing to yourself. We're all connected. We think we're disconnected because we have a single point perception of reality, but we're all connected. And it boils down to those three things. And and with my engineer's mind, I tried to explain them from that perspective, but they are truths that span thousands of years, from Plato to the Vedic traditions to, I believe very strongly, very early Christianity, if they even called it Christianity at the time. The Sufis, who predate Islam, by the way, the Sufis that I spent time with, I didn't know whether they were Muslim or Hindus, because the Naqshbandi path of Sufism that I practiced for more than a decade started indoctrinating Hindus into their lineage around the turn of the 19th, 20th century. So Sufis were embraced by Islam. They, I believe, are very connected to the sort of desert shaman, Essene traditions in the early Christian years. There's a lot of common elements there. I learned a lot from them. I learned about heart meditation, and so I appreciate that tradition quite a lot. But also with the shaman traditions, which also span every continent, that have almost identical practices and traditions on these apparent disparate indigenous cultures. These same principles exist. That we are a unique spirit. We're experiencing the world, and that all nature is universal consciousness. The plants, the stars, the earth. That there's all consciousness there, intelligence there that we need to learn to understand and communicate with. We're all part of it. It's part of us. So, these three elements sort of manifest a little bit differently across these traditions, but I was careful to to really distill it down to a common thread that would resonate with people across all these traditions. Hopefully I was successful.
Well, I think it's definitely important for us to awaken to this, but we live in this world where, I mean, we live in a planning, goal orienting, doing stuff, keeping busy, being entertained kind of world. And the idea that our very nature is what arises in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
I think what people would say is, well, I mean, I can't meditate my whole life.
No.
I'd be just, I'd have got to eat, got to be in a relationship and things like that. So I got to go offline from time to time or a lot to live my life. So how do you kind of square that with what we're saying about isness?
Well, I don't think meditation is the be all end all thing. It's a tool. It's a practice. It's a way of practicing persistence, of bringing your attention back. I mean, if you don't get distractions in meditation, you're probably doing it wrong, or taking far too many plant medicine drugs. So the point is that as you are distracted, you're teaching yourself you're teaching the skill of redirecting and bringing your attention back to your presence. You can do that when you're not meditating. I don't. I've concluded, for me, meditation is just a tool. It's not what you do to achieve something. It is a tool that you use to be persistent about staying present.
Yeah, that's interesting because we live in this achievement oriented
Mm-hmm.
world. So we even take something like meditation and
Mm-hmm.
make that some sort of achievement. I meditated for 30 minutes a day. I meditated for an hour and a half a day. Oh, really? I do it 3 hours, 2 times a day.
Or worse yet, you're proclaimed by some authority that you've achieved some great conscious achievement of consciousness and get a certificate for it.
Oh, wow. Meditator of the year. So, but in just thinking about my regular life, when I am awake to the present moment and I am experiencing what is arising now, without my attention going to the past, the future, or some sort of inner voice about myself or judgment or whatever, but I'm just allowing, I'm beholding this little flower, for example. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can just be in the moment as I walk through my life. Is that what we're talking about?
That's it.
Okay.
It's about persistence.
Yeah.
Um we are persistently barraged with distractions, causing us to live in fear and trauma and worry about the future and agonize over the past. And it's really about persistently correcting oneself and saying, but wait, I'm here right now. Embrace the journey. I mean, we were having torrential rainstorms. We lost power this morning. It's a beautiful day, and thank God we got rain. I'm just embracing that. In spite of the fact the internet went down and it took us a while to get everything going, what a fabulous moment, in spite of it all. So it's about it's about responding to the persistent distractions of living in the moment with persistently getting back to living in the moment. You're going to have thoughts, you got stuff to do, got work to do, got to walk the dog. But that doesn't stop you from embracing that moment.
Okay,
And
got it. Yeah.
it's persistent practice. There's no mastery of it. The best line I heard from a teacher was, it's a simple, people asking, well, what's enlightenment? Well, it's as simple as turning your head from here to there. And I contend, if I can divert a little bit on this subject, when I occasionally teach meditation, there's a tradition in some practices where the alleged master teaching meditation bows down to the beginning disciple and honors their state of inquisitiveness, their state of viewing what they're about to embark on as a mystery. And that is often lost by people who rest on their laurels. And realizing that that state was really where you started is where you want to go, because it's always here. It always is. And I fought for 25, 30 years meditating, trying to get past that silent nothingness, ADD, this is boring. And it was literally one day drinking coffee, and I fell into meditation and there was nothing. And I went, you mean it? That's it? That's what it was all along. I had this my very first day.
As you were drinking coffee.
As I was drinking coffee.
So you weren't like in a lotus position.
Hell no.
No,
I was sitting in a chair on the porch, drinking coffee, went into meditation for a moment and had this nothing experience, which I'm very familiar with, and the realization that that's the point. and so it's exceedingly important for one to realize that you are already on your journey the moment you decide to be on it. You are already there, because when you're present, you're there. It's not about years of meditation and achievement. I spent 30 years figuring that out, where nobody taught me that when I was 13 years old. I wish they had. I went and spent time in Buddhist retreats and traveling India. Nobody mentioned, oh, by the way, that really quiet state where nothing seems to be happening, that you keep waiting for something to happen. That's it.
Yeah.
And so hence the master bowing to the beginning disciple, saying, you are where I have returned to after decades of sacrifice and thinking I was trying to achieve something.
Which comes to the second point, the infinite journey, that we're each on a sacred journey, and no one's like further along than anybody else. So no one's made the destination.
Yep. It's critically important to embrace there's infinite possibilities, but it really has no ending, especially if you embrace it from a point of observing your presence in this single point in time.
I think that a lot of people think that this isness is something you'll attain after you die and you've had the right belief system, or you've done the right things, or whatever, then suddenly it's there for me.
If you adhere and comply to what the authorities tell you to, when you'll achieve this elusive goal when you're dead.
It's very, 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 very tricky. That's a brilliant ploy.
It's the oldest ploy in the book. It's been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. Humanity has been subjected to this, and the reality is, I mean, I would just say your journey begins the moment you decide it is, and you're already there, because there is no end. So embrace it, and embrace your present moment with childlike wonder. That's it. You don't
Yeah.
need to die to do that. In fact, if you're dead, you're not going, you can't embrace it.
Yeah.
Embrace it
Yeah.
while you have a heart and a mind and a body,
Yeah.
and embrace it now.
And there's always that opportunity. So in every
Hmm.
moment, there's the opportunity to embrace the moment.
Hmm.
And we're either choosing to embrace it or choosing to be not present.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And I'm thinking about, I mean, there are times in my life that I have really some clear moments that were extremely expansive
Mm.
moments. And I remember them vividly. And my ego wants to go that those are some kind of special moments.
Well, they
You know what I
are.
mean? Okay, okay.
Of course, they're special.
There's special moments and I can
Why
create it
not?
again now. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, they're
No?
special because they happened for a moment and then you move on. So that's what makes us. If
Yeah.
they happened all the time, it wouldn't be special.
Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, it's really interesting. I can point to several of them that
Yeah.
where it's like, wow, I know what eternal life is. This is
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this moment is and it's
Yeah.
not even like I'm thinking, but it's an experience of
Yeah.
the eternalness. And it's extremely expansive. And I have
This
distinct memories.
this is the downfall of a lot of sort of, especially sort of new age and doctrine Western gurus, but Eastern gurus as well, is that they achieve something and they spend their entire existence trying to maintain it, in the presence of their disciples. Their lives are just as messy, if not messier, than the people that sit at their feet. I I've been on the inner circle of a few. I can attest to that. Um, and if they would just let go, um, it would be a very different experience for those that they surround themselves with.
Yes. So they're attached to their role, which
Oh yeah.
means that they should be at some level or their behavior should be a certain way. And there's a lot of pressure on
Hmm.
them for that. Yeah.
Oh my
Okay.
God. Yeah. Uh, I watched one group where they were terrified of their male-oriented hierarchy, terrified of female sexuality, and just terrified of having women get too close or any kind of indication that anything might be going on. And then they're a bunch of misogynists
Yeah. Yeah.
who secretly
We
had
know
some
about them.
issues, who secretly had some
We know about
issues.
them.
Right. So it's fascinating, um, that I was fortunate enough to be on the inside of one particular group and just see. I feel like I got to watch the fall of the fall of what I would call the Christian church in a period of 5 years. I could very easily see how this beautiful man with amazing message would come and teach the masses that the spirit of creator is within you, and watch that whole thing turn into yet another hierarchically controlled male dominated hierarchy. um and I felt blessed to watch that, and for me to say, and I met a 100-year-old Sufi man who said, well, you're of Christian heritage, you really should dive back into that a little bit. And I did, and it was good advice. I kind of realized, wow, I see how that could have happened in 5 years of watching this one organization just go completely haywire and start creating books and a doctrine and putting it in writing and reading it after every meditation. Half of it was just dictated from speeches, and I just watched the whole simple heart meditation tradition dissolve into a hierarchically controlled organization where everyone's clamoring to get FaceTime with the guru. And I really felt blessed to see that, because I could see how someone with a powerful message 2,000 years ago, telling the revealing secrets from the secret mystery schools to the masses, much to their chagrin, would have his teachings very quickly hijacked, which I believe they were, but not lost, because the message was so powerful. They had to keep bits and pieces of it in there to hold it intact. But I felt grateful to experience that.
I mean, what comes to my mind is that, you know, maybe the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is something that we did in consciousness that caused us to fall into this propensity to take the beauty of the moment and create a hierarchical, powerful structure to capture it.
Oh, that gets us into the next segment.
It does, but it is. I'm on the right track. It sounds like.
I believe so. I have delved into. I don't cover it as much in my book, but I've delved into sort of the ancient Hebrew culture. I wished that I had a true Hebrew biblical scholar as an advisor on some of this, but I have studied some good ones, and I have delved into Gnosticism, which is, they would tell you the good guy was the one in the tree telling you to eat the tree of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah.
that was actually the good guy, and the bad guys were the Elohim, which was a plural, not a singular, who said if they eat from the tree of life, they will become like us. Can't have that. So it's a thorny road, delving into that, because you step on a lot of toes, but
it just feels like this is one of the, we'll get into this in part two, but it's just one of these things that humanity has to do over and over and over and over again. And it reminds me of also in the Matrix. Do you remember the Matrix series? I don't know if you remember, I think it was the third one where Neo is facing the architect, and he realizes he's been there 7 times. I mean, we're on a recycle. And we keep recycling. We're not really evolving. We keep on this path of taking our essence and whatever that is, and then creating some sort of hierarchical structure that captures it. And then it kind of
it always craters under its own weight.
Over and over.
And propels us back to the Stone Age, where we are back to the shamanistic practices and living in symbiotic relationship with heaven and earth, and
right.
And until someone sticks their head up and says, hey, let's do it again.
Right. So we'll go deeper into that, but let's talk about, unless you think there's more to talk about the Is-ness, let's talk about the Aether and what that is and what does that mean for us?
Well, that's a hotly contested subject in today's scientific paradigm. We just, with Einstein's invention of time-space fabric, we dispense with ether, which is the oldest explanation from a scientific and spiritual inquiry standpoint. The oldest explanation of the medium that connects all matter in our reality, the medium with which electromagnetic field, energy, vibrations, information travel. You can explain magnetism, attraction, and repulsion with ether. If you consider one pole of the magnet spinning in one direction and the other spinning in another, like propellers in water, they're going to attract to a central null point in the middle. They're spinning in the same direction, they're going to repel. fascinating. If you look up a YouTube video of Richard Feynman being asked to explain magnetism, he gets sort of squirming and hemming and hawing, and says, "Well, it's complicated." And but ancient philosophers, scientists, spiritual inquirers all believed that there was this substance, which is our universe, fills the empty spaces, and it is what information propagates through.
So like telepathic messages, like that would
It's
be
it's all electromagnetic energy.
right. So I looked up some quotes from, I mentioned to you as a Unity minister that Charles Fillmore, who was one of the co-founders of Unity, wrote about ether a lot.
Mhm.
And I wanted to share some of the definitions that are.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, great. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go. This is what Charles Fillmore says about ether. It's the spiritual substance in which we live, move, and have our being, and out of which can be made whatever we desire. Some scientists teach that space is heavily charged with energies that would transform the earth if they could be controlled. Arthur Eddington says that about half the leading physicists assert that the ether exists and the other half deny its existence. But in his words, both parties mean exactly the same thing and are divided only by words. One with spiritual understanding knows that the ether exists as an emanation of mind and should not be confused in its limitations with matter. Its being is governed and sustained by ideas. Ideas have no physical dimensions.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
I love that perspective. I would say, I could easily say ether is universal consciousness.
Yeah. He
It
says
contains all information.
it contains all information.
Yeah.
It has all the data.
Yeah.
That
ever happened.
Yes. And then he goes on to define substance, because he says ether is the spiritual substance. Substance is the divine idea of the underlying reality of all things. Substance is everywhere present, pervades all things, and inspires to action. It underlies all manifestation and is the spiritual essence, the living energy out of which everything is made. Through substance, all the attributes of being are expressed. It sustains and enriches any idea that is projected onto it. So it's kind of like the animating force that is under all that is.
Sure. So let's talk about that for a second. So if you consider the description of my definition of the essence of consciousness, singularity, it's a single point in time and space, has no characteristic, it just is. What's the center of an electromagnetic vortex? What's the center of a atomic structure? It's a singularity, has a single point in time and space, yet out of that, nothingness. There's no magnetism at the center of a magnet, right? But center of magnetic vortex, there is zero magnet. You can't measure magnetism. And the problem for our scientists is they can't measure it, they don't study it. So they don't ask themselves, well, what is that nothingness with which all this energy manifests around? And all this information revolves around and seems to emanate from, but at its center, it is nothing. It has no mass, has no dimension. And yet all substance comes out of that nothingness. You have the cosmologists in today's scientific paradigm will say, well, the universe is created out of a singularity, which has no dimension, no time. And everything was created from that. I'm sure they're trying to disprove that because that's so incriminating to everything else they say. What's quick digression, what was ether replaced with in our current relativistic, quantumistic paradigm of fabric of time, space? What the hell is that? Don't you have to be a conscious presence to experience time and space? if time and space existed, but there was no consciousness to perceive it, would it exist?
Mm.
So it's fascinating to me that they replaced it with a fabric that requires a conscious observer relative to be relative to something in time and space. Yet the study of consciousness is banned because we can't measure it, because the center of every vortex, there's nothingness. The essence of our consciousness, there's nothingness. I can't measure that. And in Platonic belief system, that's the lowest level of Plato's, the corporeal physical existence. We can measure it. It experiences time and space. The mind can experiences time, but it can go beyond spatial limitations. The heart, no time, no space. It's called the Platonic tripartite. In my book, I describe it as the three electromagnetic vortexes in our body. The brain, the heart, and the gut are three nerve bundles. And the Sufis taught me there's only one chakra, and that's the heart chakra. Everything is a reflection from that. Everything emanates, all substance emanates from a singularity point that has no substance. So it forces you to say, well, what's the unseen presence we can experience, but we can't measure? It creates physical matter, creates experiences, but at its essence, it seems to come from nothing. And
so if the ether is the medium that connects all matter, then this is like when we pray, when we have thoughts, when we have reactions, when we have any of the human experience that we have, we are vibrating our experience or expression or whatever into this ether. Is that right? And then
I believe so, but I think you're also connecting something, that singularity that exists outside of it, that is unmeasurable and infinite.
Okay.
So you're bringing that into this reality in the form of thoughts and vibrations.
Okay.
But where does that intent come from? It comes from an unseen, unmeasurable, conscious presence. And that's where our current science is stuck, because can't measure it, can't study it.
Yeah, I see where science is stuck.
Yeah.
I see where science is stuck. I'm just looking at, what is a practical way of looking at me in my world and you in your world, and how we are interacting with the rest of the world, and how the ether connects us. And so, to me, it seems like my thoughts would go into this ether space and go out and permeate everything.
I would
kind of
say
like,
so.
yeah. So kind of like we were saying about the golden rule. And when I harm someone, when I take the life of someone, when I cause something harm, that is an energy that kind of vibrates into this ether, which I think is kind of where the collective consciousness is.
And you harm yourself.
Right. Yeah. And at the same time, also, like, I think prayer is like putting an intention into this ether that is beyond space-time and impacts the collective consciousness and can have an impact on the object of my intention.
Yeah. And I don't know if ether is beyond space-time. It seems there seems to be a lot of confusion. Scientists tried to measure it and they couldn't, so therefore it doesn't exist, right? But it certainly connects singularity presences that are beyond space and time. So whether and it could very well be the reason why the scientific experiments in the 20th century to measure ether failed, is because it is truly beyond space and time. Yet everything it's a single consciousness. I love the shamanic view that all nature, rocks, plants, planets, stars, they all are conscious beings. And then the fact that there's a unseen spirit world, where you get guidance, and that unseen wisdom comes out of nature, comes out of the etheric reality around us. Think about a radio signal, music on a radio signal. Radio signal is electromagnetic waves propagating through ether. You can measure it. Comes to a speaker, creates sound waves. You can measure that. But you can't measure the emotions and the impact of the information that music conveys. That comes from a place that you cannot measure. Right?
Right.
And that is beyond the physical realm. Its effects impact the physical realm. I go to the trouble of making a song and transmitting it over the airwaves and putting it onto speakers, and people listen to it and they're moved by it. You're communicating something. Where did that come from? Didn't come from the ether. It traveled, it propagated through it. Didn't come from the airwaves. It propagated through it. But where did that information and the underlying feelings that you experienced from that song, where did that come from?
Okay, is there an answer?
I hope not. It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. Okay. All right. And we stay in the mystery. And it's interesting to feel the tension of being in a mystery because, there's something about the mind that wants to answer that question and then there we go. Ding, ding, ding. Goal achieved.
Yep. There is no absolute truth. If there's not a persistent mystery on the journey, then you're not on your journey.
Well, in terms of absolute truth, maybe the absolute truth is, the way I would look at absolute truth is the three principles that you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
The essence,
the journey,
and the universal consciousness. To me, that's absolute truth.
It seems to resonate with a lot of people for tens of thousands of years across cultures and continents. So I have to believe there's something to it.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't invent it.
No, I know that. So is there anything more we should say about this before we go into part two? Because part two, we're going to be talking about, we just got to lay the groundwork about isness and really what I would call like our authentic nature, our intended nature, our divine nature, different ways of saying that. But that this is who we are. And that there are so many blocks to us expressing this. And that's why we're in this kind of entangled mess that we're in. That's why we have war and disease and, all the problems that we have over and over and over and over again. And we're in this cycle. And what do we do to break out of this cycle? So that's what we're going to go into in part two. Is there anything else, Michael, that you want to say before we close on this one?
I think we're good. We can sort of wrap up at the end of the next one as far as what we can do about it.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we haven't really covered is this idea of the sovereign
spiritual sovereignty. The
spiritual
fact that
sovereignty.
We are each and every individual a sacred spirit. Spirit and soul, I believe, are two different things. I think soul is what's manifested around our presence in our existence, but spirit is a sacred presence that exists in every conscious being. And if you don't honor that, then you don't honor it within yourself.
And so the sovereignty of each spirit
Mhm.
is paramount. Like it's really
Yes.
important.
Yes.
So this idea that even though the third principle is that there's a universal consciousness and that we are all a part of it and that we are all one, this spiritual sovereignty is still very, very
We all
important.
have a very unique position and perspective in that consciousness, and it's no one else can have that perspective.
And it's our responsibility to retain that.
Yes.
Okay. And so we'll be
And
talking more about this in the next.
persistently maintain it.
Yes, persistently maintain it. Okay.
Well,
All right.
I'm probably going to change venues here real quick
Okay.
and take a break, and I will catch you on the flip side here.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you everyone for listening. This is kind of a fairly esoteric conversation. I hope you all hung with us. The next part's really going to be very, very important. So thanks everyone for joining us. And I now close the spiritual forum.